Well, hello and welcome back to Acton Town, which we've talked about before. We're here to wait for our 38 stock train to come from the museum to come and actually run on the Piccadilly line today on a test run for some public events that are coming up where you could get to ride on a train.
In this week's episode.
And it's called the 38 stock because it came into service in 1938.
It was, and it looked like this.
This used to be the longest running stock on the London Underground.
The lighting is not brilliant white, but it's like a soft glow.
All of that together, it makes me feel like melting.
Greetings and welcome to a very special Hidden London Hangout. Today we're going on a beautiful red train to celebrate probably the design icon of the London Underground train stock. That's what I would say. Nice. I don't do this alone. I've got three amazing people from the London Transport Museum to guide us through our chat and to talk about what was a beautifully sunny day. First of all, Chris Nix. You were driver, guard and everything that day, weren't you?
Well, yeah, keeping it loose, keeping it tight. Dancing in the moonlight.
Sounds like a great night in. Sidney Holloway, how are you, my lovely?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to having a quick look at this because we've not seen this before.
No, it's cool. And Laura Hilton Brown, I mean, you're going to love the design of this train. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Love the design, love the colour. Design icon epitomises this episode, I think.
I love it.
You know why I've got the moonlight thing in my head? It's because I was off moonlighting away from the three of you with this one. That is, I'm afraid.
It's like a fling with a train, wasn't it?
It's like Chris has to explain his jokes to us.
They're always the best sort of
Highbrow.
jokes, the ones that
They're
you have
so
to
good.
explain, right?
I loved it. So the 38 stock, for anyone who doesn't know, was a train that revolutionised the way we built trains on the London Underground in many ways, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's called the 38 stock because it came into service in 1938 and it was a revolutionary train, wasn't it, Nixie?
It was, and it looked like this. They were revolutionary because it was the first time that they managed to get all of the equipment that makes the train move underneath the floor of the train or underneath the seats, rather than taking up lots of space in the saloon of the train where the people are. So that was its key attribute. And basically all underground stock that follows that basic design.
Also, it's longer, isn't it? So they're a little bit longer than previous stocks were before that.
Yeah, they were longer.
Yep.
It wasn't that the previous ones couldn't be longer. It's just that they did
and also
that at the same time.
And they had to expand platforms. We've talked about that, all of that stuff before. What I love about this, so this used to be the longest running stock on the London Underground.
That's
However, one 72 stock has overtaken, I believe.
And this is
I mean, the
fascinating.
73 stock has overtaken it already. The 72s will knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did from 1938 to 1988.
But these were incredible trains because what you had was a train that lived its life and it was kind of retired off and then it was actually brought back to the Northern Line called the Red 38s in the 1980s to kind of satisfy an increasing demand for tube travel. They had to bring them back, repaint them, reupholster them, and then bring them back into service again.
And when they were done there, off to the Isle of Wight for some of them to carry on for even longer until fairly recently. So the other thing is, of course, they didn't just serve one line. This was a stock that was full, across the tube line. So the one that we have finished its life on the Northern Line, but these were really ubiquitous trains to see around the system. There were just shy of 1,300 of these
actual trains,
1,300
sets of carriages all bolted together.
So
That's an enormous number.
They did just over 1,000. It was about 1,100, I think, as 38 stock, and then there was a second batch that were modifications of earlier ones and prototypes that were brought into 38 stock standard. So
was
a lot of them.
Was the 38 stock the first kind of ubiquitous stock across? Because I mean, the standard
the
stock.
standard stock, as the name suggests, was one that was used across multiple
And that was sort of
lines.
1920s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Standard
Yeah.
stock.
Yeah, almost a third of the driving motor cars was taken up by the electrical control gear on the standard stock. So it made a big difference to the number of people that you could
Get
fit
on.
into them.
Space.
Yeah.
And they were longer
incredible.
anyway.
And they look pretty fancy.
Well, I was going to say, because our aesthetics expert, Laura, these trains, they didn't just do the job, they were beautiful. I mean, even the lights on them were like Art Deco. They were stunning, weren't they?
Everything was thought about, wasn't it? Everything's lovely. And I just keep looking. I know the pictures behind us now. So, and I just, that lovely shot with the blue sky, and the bright red train. I can't wait to see the next bit.
So should we hop on and actually have a journey?
Let's do it.
Now, I luckily got to make this journey with a member of my team from yesteryear, a lovely guy called Andrew Smith. He was my first member of staff, and at the time he was working at the museum, he was seconded from the Northern Line when he was an instructor operator. But at the start of his journey on the Underground, he was a guard working
How amazing.
on these.
Oh,
And
Alex has a soft spot for
No,
guards.
don't start me on this.
Whenever I think about the 38 stock, I always think of Andrew because he was the first person who told me stories about working on these.
Oh, what a lovely connection.
And started to humanise it. So it wasn't just a piece of technology, it was a piece of technology with some great stories. So, shall we?
Let's do this.
Mind the doors, please.
I'm joined today by actually my oldest operational friend on the Underground. 24 years ago since we met, isn't it?
Yeah.
Andrew Smith. Now, Andrew, you joined the organisation as a guard, didn't you? Oh well, you first introduced to the train as a guard.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
I was a Roman for a few months, which basically means a station staff, CSA, basic CSA. But a few months, then yes, on guard. Most of my life, operational life, has been on the trains. Yes, starting the guard. Yes.
I first met you when you were an instructor operator on the Northern Line, and you went on to the dizzy heights of management after that. But because Andrew was a guard on the 38 stock, this means that you have special insight that we want, which is the customer experience of being inside the train. What it was like to operate before trains were one-person operation with just a driver. And in a few minutes, we'll be joined by a train. We'll get on, we'll have a look at it, and hopefully show you why you want to have a ride on this and see what trains used to be like on the Underground. So, any moment, once this one's gone, we'll be on board. We'll see you in a moment when it's arriving. So here we go, Andrew. Moment has arrived. We get to do a quick bit of touristing,
Okay.
but our carriage awaits. Should we get aboard?
Yes.
Right. I love the fact that even the bicycle is on message with the colour of the train. Let's get up here. Well, here we go.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah. Whoa. The most comfortable seat ever to ride on the tube, I would say.
Absolutely.
Certainly a contender, right?
No. In my humble opinion, this is the most comfortable seat on any transport system, including planes. In my humble opinion.
They're just so deep when you sit down. You're not quite sure if you're going to finish moving downwards, are you?
Absolutely. So comforting. So very comforting.
And so, Andrew, I've invited you along on this because when I first met you, in my second job at the museum, when you came to join the team, you told me all sorts of things about this train because you worked on one, didn't you?
I was a guard on this for a number of years.
And therefore I think one of the perfect people to tell us about the passenger experience, the customer experience of being on these trains. Now, you told me that this comfort created a couple of problems for an otherwise superb train.
Yes, I mean, okay. What happened was, very briefly, and I'll keep it brief, is that when the Northern Line was running, I was a guy from '85, and then we had such a surge of passengers, we didn't have enough stock trains for the passengers. They was always packed. So rather than getting new trains, the development costs and how long that'd take, they said we refurbish some older trains, which are these 38s. So we initially done some training on them. Everybody had to do training, and then when they came in, I remember the first actual week they were using what's called split turns, peak service. Bus drivers call them spread overs. On the trains we call them split turns, which basically in the peak, one train goes out in the morning out of the depot to Sahai Barnet, and then back, and in the afternoon it'd go another trip and back, and that would cover the peak service. I remember it quite clearly. So what would happen is, I remember the first week it came on, I was lucky to be on it as a guard, and when we actually went up for the first time, I remember the train coming in, and some passengers was hesitant to get on it. I remember that, especially in the mornings. Anyway, by about the third day, obviously they wouldn't be packed, they got on the trains. The only problem is, if you can actually see it now, the lighting is not brilliant white, but it's like a soft glow.
It's cosy, isn't it?
It's lovely. So when you actually sit on the seat and you have that soft glow, people would have had hard days at work. When I got to Morden, rather than getting off at the Ballums and the Captain Sal's and the Collier's Woods and even the Stockwells, they'd actually doze off. And like normally on a 59 stock, you might have one, possibly two max persons. Yeah, on the whole train, before you say, excuse me sir, excuse me madam, wake them up. On these, I guarantee you, at least 2 to 3 per carriage were out like a light. It was so comfortable.
I can imagine that was a real problem for the last train as well at night.
Yes, yes, because the driver would be really.
So for those of you who haven't experienced this train yet, and you really should, the seats are comfy.
Yes.
As you say, it's got very warm, cosy lighting.
Yes.
But the suspension is also very smooth.
Absolutely.
So it kind of rocks you to sleep. Really,
very much
it?
so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Very, very comforting.
So you told me though that there was another problem that was potentially worse for the guard though, in relation to that.
Sometimes, like for instance, if you're doing a late turn or a really long shift, and sometimes you may get to a stop, and you might be so relaxed because you're supposed to be on the guard seat, but these are much more comfortable. You might doze off a bit, and then obviously you still got to watch a bright light. So you think when you come to a stop, sometimes the driver will say hello there, and you jump up and open the doors. That could possibly happen. I wouldn't possibly say how and who, but yes, that could happen.
My guess is if you get caught doing that more than once or twice, then that would be potentially the end of your guarding career.
Well, it could have been either oral or written caution, because effectively what you're doing, you're delaying the service.
Yeah.
As soon as the train comes in, you do your checks, you open your guards door first, check sure that the train is fully berthed, check up and down, there's a set procedure. When it's all safe, then you open the doors. But if you're delayed doing that, especially more than a certain time, trains behind you are stacking. And that's the whole point, you've got to keep it moving all the time in a safe way. So that's one thing you have to do.
So actually the comfort of this train, the supreme comfort of this train, potential downside is a little bit too comfortable and people...
Yes, it can be really relaxing comfort. Delay to the guard doing his job efficiently straight away. And also, if the train was going back, by the time he went to all the passengers, the signal would be off because the guard would have to wake everybody up. By the time he's done his turnaround in 4 minutes, that's the late train back. So yeah, potentially that comfort could have a negative effect.
Now we're not used to having guards today on underground trains at least.
Yep.
But when these were operating up until 1988 on the system, these were guarded trains.
Yes,
they?
right. Yes.
And so, what did the guard have to do then that means that we don't have to have a guard today?
Okay, there was a number of things, and I won't go through all of them. But one of the things as well is that when you actually get to modern trains now, it's called springer plate parking brake or air brakes. So once the train stopped and shut down, the air that kept the brake away from the wheels will actually lock down and lock it. These don't have them. So what you'd have to do then is go to each 4 positions, each cab, which is 4 positions on the train, each end of the train and the middle, and you'd have to apply the brake manually. But unlike later stock, like 62s and 59s, there was like a sort of ratchet system and like a sort of, and if you weren't careful, you can get your fingers caught in them. There's quite a few times where I've had skin ripped off my fingers because I didn't. My fault, didn't do it properly. You have to do the ratchet and do it bit by bit by bit. Do not rush.
So part of it was about helping the driver to actually manage the train technology. From the passenger's point of view, the guard was responsible for the doors as well?
Yes. Well, this is what we've always taught as guards. This is the rule. The driver is responsible for the train and the guard is responsible for the passengers. So the passenger safety is your paramount thing. Another thing as well, if the driver had any sort of medical or any personal issues, then you'd go to a system. That's why every guard was actually trained to drive the train and to deal with the defects. So if there's any problems with the driver, which I've happened to be more than once, in London Bridge, I remember a particular time when a person unfortunately jumped in front of his train, and I went to assist him. I had to move the train to a safe place and assist the emergency services and get the train moving again as well. So that happens as well. So the guy was an assistant driver only in an emergency.
And so you're responsible for making announcements as well?
No, the driver's responsible for the announcement. But on these stocks, yes, the guard was, because there was no PA system at that time. So if there was, for instance, if the train had to be turned short or any delays, the guard would actually go to each carriage and stand up and say, ladies and gentlemen, I do apologise for the delay, depending on what type of delay it was, if there's any kind of emergency stuff like that.
So you'd actually do that without any speaker assistance?
No,
This is why you've always had such good voice projection,
I don't know about
natural for being a PA system. So, as the guards, you had your own position, didn't you? If you were guarding in this car, that panel over there was your domain.
That is my office.
And this bar here?
The guard bar is supposed to be up at all times.
So,
that guard bar
should we go and have a look at that? You can talk me through it.
This bar, you would unhinge it from this position, swing it round, and then come to unhook it onto that position there. And that would be your position. So passengers, it's a physical barrier to remind passengers not to come beyond that point.
Gotcha. And so this panel over here is the interesting one, isn't it?
That's the guards panel, yes.
So do you want to step in and talk me through?
Right, okay. I will not be touching because there's someone else in control, but I will not be touching. But basically, there's one closed button in the center. The bottom row, there's one closed button in the center, and there's 2 open buttons. They must be pressed simultaneously with 2 hands. You're trained to use 2 hands and not the double finger that some people used to do. Okay, so you must do that. Once the doors are closed, and you have this light called the pilot light, that has proved the door circuit, and all the doors are closed.
And is that blue light?
That blue light was there. You have one in each panel. Originally on this stock, you used to have one in the centre at the top, but for added reliability, then they put 2. So they moved it from a single one that used to be up there to 2 up here. Because one thing about underground, they always always double up for safety and reliability. If you've got 1 and that goes, you're stuck. If you've got 2, you've got a backup. So do the backup of anything there.
And it's a fail-safe, isn't it? Because
absolutely.
The safe condition is with the light on. So if the bulb fails, you automatically assume it's a danger.
Absolutely. But you've also got the other side. So if one bulb fails, you check the other side. If both fails, if there's no light on either side, you do not move the train. And if the train is moving in service and it stops, then you pull the emergency handle down as well to alert the driver to stop, tell them you've got no pilot light, and then you go and try and get it back. If not, you then physically walk through the train and manually check every single door. Very rare to happen, but it can happen.
And I see we've got a gauge here with London Transport, LT, marked on it.
That's okay.
What's that doing?
Okay, that is called a train line here. You had 2 separate air parks, got main line and train line. Long story short, principally that's the braking system. That's the emergency braking system. So the train will not move unless that's above a certain pressure. Also, if you have any issues, then you pull that down and the pressure will go down and the train will come to a stop, basically.
So Andrew, when you and I worked together in school liaison for all those years, teaching young people how to use the transport system safely and responsibly, we talked a lot about these things, didn't we? The intercar doors.
Intercar doors.
And about why we don't go through them.
I cannot impress enough, as Chris and I used to teach children and young people, do never ever go through the intercar doors in service unless you are authorised to do so, especially when the train is moving, because you've got two carriages moving side to side. Now you open one door and the other carriage is still moving. If you mistake your stepping, you could fall between the gap. So it's essential you never go from one carriage to another with the train moving. The train has to be stopped and you have to get authorization to do it and never go through other ones. Then obviously you've got the end-door cutouts, because I'll give an example. Places like Charing Cross on the northbound had a shorter platform because originally it was a Jubilee Line platform. So what they did, rather than extend the platform, when you get to a platform and the last set of doors was in the tunnel, you'd press the end door cutout and then that door, the end door would not open, and that's safety for the passengers. But as a guard, you still stand, look back to your passengers, say, excuse me ladies and gentlemen, the end doors are not going to open, put the country to the next doors as well. So you do that. But always remember to plug it back in for the next station as well. Right. So that's something you'd always have to do as well.
Okay, well I'll tell you what, let's go and have a look at a bit more of the saloon, the passenger experience. Right, so Andrew, we're just coming through Holborn at the moment, and Holborn has a little trick up its sleeve, which is just there. That was the old set of points that turns out to go into the Aldwych branch. So to get into the Aldwych branch, if you were on this track, you have to reverse into there. So let's have a look.
A bit like British Museum.
Yeah. So let's have a look at these. Now these have got a proper name. Do you know the proper name?
No, I don't.
They're known as shuffle lamps because of their shape.
I've always loved the shape of them.
They are absolutely fab.
They're beautiful.
Lovely things.
It's like a sort of oyster kind of glass feel for it.
That's right.
And it actually adds that warm, soft feeling glow as well. Absolutely beautiful.
Now, unfortunately, these used to get broken in service quite a lot. Although they're quite chunky, people deliberately break them.
I know, and some used to take them as well.
Yeah.
Then what they changed, they just took them all out in the end.
Yeah.
So
they're actually in quite short supply. The good news is, if you like them, then you can buy them. Our museum friends have got a set of replicas of these that we had made for the restoration of our Q stock. And I've got some which are going in my shed. There's the lighting there, but they're really beautiful, kind of sculpted shape to them. So these things, don't have those anymore. The strap hangers.
Yes.
Were there any issues with those in service, Andrew?
Well, apart from people borrowing them.
Yeah.
Borrowing them, which is not a good thing. No, they're pretty good, pretty solid. They didn't used to stretch. You used to get the odd one or two, very rarely. That used to sometimes if the elastic or the band is stretched, they'd be dangling down. You get a fitter or a controller, sort of call the controller, get a fit, screw up, and put a new one in or leave them without. But yeah, they were pretty solid. But yes, sometimes, especially to football matches, some people borrow them and use it for savoury.
I gather Special Forces used to borrow them. They started the trend, apparently.
Yes.
But some of them, later on in their life, were fitted with adverts on them as well. So we've got a few in the collection which have got things like miniature drinks cans and other kind of objects that were part of an advertising campaign.
I didn't know that.
Amazing things. So yeah, next to the 38 stock that's in the museum, we've got a set of 4 of those with different designs on them.
Wow. One thing I love is got the original map as well, including the Drayton Park extension as well.
And of course that's your old stomping ground, isn't it? The Northern Line is what you guarded on and also what you drove on.
Yes.
When I first met you, you were an instructor operator.
That's right, at Golders Green.
Yeah.
Yeah, great line. A lot of dust, but great line, great stock. A great line, absolutely fantastic line. A great line to work on.
And you got to drive through a lot of the stations that we've covered as part of the Hidden London Hangouts, including the ultra secret nuclear bunker that was North End or Bull and Bush.
Yes. Great place to work. And historically, it's a good place to visit, a good place to see. One of my other favourite stations was Angel, because like Clapham North and Clapham Common now, that was an island platform. And that
terrifying,
it was to be absolutely packed. As a driver, you had to come in there slowly, because they used to, before station control was perfected, people used to come down all the time, especially on the lift. So you used to come in really slow, and people used to be on the tiptoes at the edge of the platforms. When that was converted to the very wide platform on the southbound only, and used the original northbound platform, it transformed the station. And one thing about it as well, it had a massive, really long escalator. I think one of the longest in Europe at the time.
Right, yeah.
So that was a great sort of thing to do. I always told you, they said at the time that we were going to also convert Clapham North and Clapham Common, but they never got around to do it. So
it's a tricky job, isn't it?
Yeah, students were just there, and it's a lot of money to do. But yeah, there's quite a few stations that have changed during that time as well. So yeah, it's a great place to be.
So there's a couple of other things which I'm just noticing while we're talking. It's probably because it's getting towards lunchtime that I'm starting to notice the adverts, and particularly one over here. So these adverts were all kept in the, as it was when it came out of service, so 1988. And in particular, this one here. And look at the prices. You get about a full breakfast for 81p. A cup of suspicious looking soup for 17p, burger and fries for 50p. Those days are gone, eh?
Absolutely. I remember there was some times when there was a particular advert or campaign, and if it was really attractive for whoever, especially like Earls Court exhibitions, like the car show, and all other sort of models and stuff, people used to get people to take them home, take them with them. Yeah. And then sort of keep them as their own personal thing. So sometimes you have gaps. Now behind them, sometimes there was ventilation holes. So you had to get another one and put it back to cover it up for safety reasons. But people used to take some of them home as well. But it's good to reminisce on some of the older adverts as well, and the prices, which is a little bit different from now.
So, just looking around one last time at this cabin, I think the things which I really love about it is the sort of the panelled wood has a sort of timeless quality to it. The beautiful maquette finish on the seats and the comfy armrests. And you know, the little detail that I always think of when in my mind's eye when I think about 38 stock is actually just over there above the door. Do you see, even that ventilation panel has got the car number on it, done in a bullseye roundel with the number 10012. Just beautifully, it's such a nice touch that finishes it off, isn't it?
The workmanship and the craftsmanship on these trains are absolutely beautiful. I mean, if you look at the things, I mean, look at this, look at the different grains between the two, and that's replicated for the whole of the train. That standard, that high quality, that craftsmanship, that workmanship, and the whole train is like that. Every carriage is just done that air of quality, and even either brass or gold fittings are just down to precise. It's really maintained. Even if you look at the flooring as well, look at the flooring, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Strip wooden flooring.
And really long, well lasting.
We haven't
as well.
had that kind of thing on the underground since the D-Stock was refurbished back in the early noughties.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's odd to the modern eye to see that, isn't it? Also things like windows that open.
Yes, I miss that on modern trains, because obviously for fresh air you're totally reliant on the air conditioning system. While on these, you could open the windows and then let natural air flow in. Okay, sometimes they totally could get a bit dusty, but the open section, it was really nice to have some really love fresh air and stuff like that. But as working in them, you had to have that balance between the quality and also doing your job. For instance, all these sort of symbols are here. For instance, one thing about a train is that if something didn't work properly, you had to know how to isolate to keep it moving. So you have to look at all the different, where all the different equipments are, and these little symbols here remind you where things are throughout the train and locations as well. So it's just these little touches that made a difference. And
actually, you just reminded me, of course, the key thing about this vehicle is it was the first deep tube anywhere that was built with all of the electrical equipment under the floor rather than taking up room in the saloon like its predecessors, the standard stock did. So these seats are doubly important. Not only are they incredibly comfortable, they've also got all of the equipment that's working the train hidden away underneath them.
That's right, all the isolation equipment is along the train. Now you have one car will do the motoring driving, and another car will concentrate on the compressors for the air, making the train on there, another with something else, electrical, motors. So you can isolate different motors. So you can do isolations. It does two things. It provides more space, with more reliability, because what you can do, if you have a failure on one system, you don't necessarily have to take the train out of service, but if you isolate it, because you always double up or treble up or have 4 of something, like compressors, you'd have 4 compressors, you could isolate one and still work on the 3 quite comfortably and have more than enough air to keep it in service. And that would be work, and you could run it for the whole day until the night time. The maintenance staff will rectify the fault. It's good for next day's service. So it's really well thought out and thought ahead. Good planning.
So I'm inclined to take a seat again actually and enjoy the ride for a bit before we go and have a look at the cab and see what it's like from the driver's point of view.
Okay.
Okay, well let's take a seat then, enjoy the comfort. So I'm now joined by Graham Neal, who's Head of Heritage Rail Operations at London Transport Museum and is responsible for this marvellous vehicle being able to actually run on the modern day tube. Graham, how hard is it? How do you do it? It's magic as far as I'm concerned.
It seems hard, but it's actually quite easy because the processes that you need to allow a train such as this to run are fairly well defined in all of our procedures. And as I'm the ex-chief rolling stock engineer for the Underground, I was responsible for approving trains like this. So for me, it's a very familiar process. When I came over to work for the museum, my job was to get these trains running again after COVID. So it meant renewing all of the certification and the approvals, but because I knew all the people, it was relatively easy and quick for me to do. So we go through a process, we check the train is still, let's call it airworthy, but we mean roadworthy for the railway. We give a train a good inspection, we overhaul what we need to overhaul, we test it and make sure it's all okay by taking it out with no passengers on first, and then once all that's done, we go for the full approval to take passengers. So it's a stage process. Check it's all okay, take it out on a test run, you need approval for that, and then when that's all done, it's all successful, you get it approved for passenger use, and that involves talking to virtually everybody on the Underground that could be involved or affected by it. The line themselves, their managers, the central Underground control centre, the people who deal with the day-to-day service and perturbations and issues that happen on a day-to-day basis need to be informed. We have to get the emergency response unit if, for whatever reason, the train became stranded or derailed. They need to know how to recover it. So it's every party that would normally get involved for any normal passenger train that's been off the system for a while.
Now I know because in my day job, this is my train. It's part of the museum collection, and the responsibility for its care sits in my team. We've done an enormous amount of work down the years in doing heavy overhauls on it to keep it up to modern standards and certified. But operating a vintage piece like this on the system is still quite unusual, and there must be a couple of key operational differences between operating this and what would normally be on the line, the 73 stuff.
There is, and first of all, this train doesn't normally operate on this particular line. We're on the Piccadilly line today, so we have to get checks to make sure it will still fit down the tunnel, because the systems on the trains in the tunnels are always dynamic, they're always moving. We then need a crew to actually drive the train, and we use our special test train crews. Test train crews are trained to drive virtually any vehicle on the Underground, and a few that are not on the Underground as well. And because of that, and they're not specific to this line, we get them familiarised with this particular train and they're trained to drive it.
It's partly about the familiarity with the vehicle, but also about the route familiarity, isn't it?
The test crews are also familiar with all the lines on the Underground and some of the non-operational areas as well, so they can drive a vehicle virtually anywhere.
And they would normally be driving either tests on existing stock or specialist things like rail adhesion trains and battery locos and so on. They can do all of that. Yeah.
Battery locos are normally driven by a transplant fleet, but anything that's not a battery loco and a transplant vehicle would be driven by this test train crew. The one thing they don't do, of course, because they're test train drivers, is they don't normally operate with passengers on board.
Yeah.
So on our special heritage runs, we have to have an operating official to oversee them, carrying out the door opening and closing and dealing with the passenger detrainment and boarding.
And the reason we're able to do this on this test run is because we're all staff rather than customers. So,
and that operating official is officially in charge of the train while there's passengers on board, but as soon as we detrain the last passengers or before we get the first passengers on, it's a test train, and so it's run by the test train engineers, and test train engineers always accompany these heritage trains. We have a test train engineer and support engineer group as well. I used to be one of those, so I'm familiar with some of this too. So I act as a supernumerary engineer as well.
And you also have to have a group of volunteer stewards as well, don't you, when we're running it in passenger service. So one thing that I do know about this vehicle is there will come a point where it is no longer compatible with the modern day tube. Could you explain why that is and when that will be?
Well, as the underground modernises itself and brings in onboard new trains and new signalling systems that allow you to not only carry more passengers but carry them through along the line a lot faster and closer together and safer, then the old signalling system that's mounted to this train will be removed. And once it's removed, this train is no longer compatible with the line. But we only really have two options. We run it on lines where it's still compatible, which we can do at the moment. We can run it on the Piccadilly line, and we can run it on the north end of the Metropolitan line because that's retaining some of the old signalling. Or we have to fit a new modern signalling system to the train, which is a major change to the train. And to keep the heritage look of the train, it's very difficult to hide new modern technology under seats and things where there's space available to do that. So at the moment, there's still a big question mark about whether or not we'll be able to obtain that equipment, and the signalling suppliers are sort of saying they might donate some to us, and then once it's donated, we've then got to design the installation and actually fit it, and then it would be able to run. But again, only in certain places.
So the message is, if you want to experience riding on this fabulous vehicle, get on and do it soon while it's still possible for us to run it in this form in service. Thank you, Graham. Well, Andrew, we seem to have suddenly come into daylight. So here we go. We're at the business end of things here now, and I've stood in this cab so many times when it's been in the depot, but it's very rare to get a glimpse inside it when it's actually out on the system and moving.
It's great to see. It brings back so many memories. Okay, it's a different line, but it's still the feeling. Still track, still train, still 38 stock. I remember as a guard, we used to love them as a guard, but drivers didn't like them because the cab from a 38 to a 59, the cab is a lot smaller as well. And at night, especially if it's a night shift as well, you used to have those things that are called retarders. Basically, it's like a sort of ABS for trains.
Right.
And at night time, there used to be a lot of sparking and arcing as well, as a basis of under severe braking. And the drivers, especially with their glasses, didn't like the sort of light at night sort of thing. But we loved them.
So sorry, was the 59 smaller than the 38 in the cab?
No.
The other way around?
No, the 59 was larger in the cab.
And now I notice that our driver is choosing to drive standing.
You can do either on 59s or 38s. It's only sort of the 72s where you could do that, and after modern stocks are all sitting down now.
Yeah.
You can't stand up driving.
I mean, I know the seats are capable of being moved back out of the way, so I believe you can drive an S-Stock standing.
Okay, yes.
But yeah, the seats on these had kind of a bolster, didn't they?
Yes,
which would be a back support. Or I guess you could rest your bum on if
you can.
If you're driving. But so can you talk me through what's the thing called that is using to control?
Well, on his right hand, it's called a master controller. That acceleration. It does two jobs. it's to accelerate and deaccelerate. So as he's swinging it around clockwise, that's also sort of full power. As he takes it around to off anti-clockwise, that sort of takes the power off. Also, if he releases it, basically it's a valve underneath that if he releases it, the brakes are applied, because the train line air will go through the braking system. Tells if for instance he used to let go, the full braking application would apply. So he has to keep it held down at all times.
That's the very crudely named dead man's handle.
It is indeed. Yes, yeah, I didn't want to use those words, but yes,
indeed,
exactly what it is.
It's basically if somebody were to be getting a bit sleepy, should we say, or for whatever reason not apply that pressure, it fails safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's restroking mechanism. You can tell he's an experienced driver. That restroking mechanism, because as you drive along the track, you see gaps in the positive rail, and you go from one section to another. And sometimes, if you go out of one section, the motors can lose that section of power. So by restroking it, you're resetting it again. So that's a very experienced professional driver as he does that. Underneath that as well, you have like a little gold, what's called selector switch. So it's like on an automatic car, you've got neutral, first and second. Second is full power. One, you'd use it, for instance, if you're in a slippery slope in the snow, and that'll give you reduced traction, reduced power. So basically give you a better traction to move up hills and slippery surfaces, either in the winter or, as I said, leaves on track and stuff like that.
I presume as well, by feathering the throttle in that way you were describing, it reduces the amount of arcing and sparking as you go over the sections.
Absolutely.
So here we go. Wow. It really does come into a platform fast, doesn't it?
Yes.
So we're at Southgate, and one of the lovely things here is if you're the driver, you can already see daylight when you're at the end of the platform.
So okay. We don't have nothing like that in the Northern Line at all.
It's a really unusual one here, because you're basically going under a small hill and coming straight back out again. And then we're properly into the Holden extension end there, aren't we? Some magnificent stations. You alright? What's up?
This is one of the joys of being a driver. This is the joys of being a driver of any type of train. When you're in the open section, a long straight track, and you've got that open air feeling. It's almost a sense of freedom when you're driving the train in the open section. You've got time to, as long as you're monitoring your job, the train and the track and the signals, it's also balanced with a sense of freedom that you've got that open track ahead of you, like a sort of person would do when on an open road of a car, like a TV advert. When a TV advert, you never see any other cars, and you've got the freedom on the road. You actually do get it on the train, unless there's other traffic in front of you, like engineering trains or other trains. It's that freedom of track. It's really nice.
Especially on a day like today.
It's beautiful. Absolutely.
Weather. So Andrew, how many years did you do driving in total?
I'd done 21 years driving, and after that I went for management after that. As a manager, you still had to do keeping your driving license up, because with the incidents, for instance, stalled trains, signal failures, track failures, point failures, people under trains, any sort of incident at all, trespassers on the track. So you still have to keep your driving license up anyway. So I had driving license on the Northern Line and on the Central Line as well.
So basically you had to go and still drive when it was the most difficult circumstances.
Absolutely.
So I guess a lot of people, when they think about a driver, they think about the actual act of physically driving a train, and these are proper old school trains where there's not computers doing it for you. You're actually doing the job of driving.
Yes.
But I'm right in saying, aren't I, that a lot of driving is actually about dealing with minor and sometimes major issues that come up with either the train or the track or other operational issues, isn't it? It's a lot of problem solving.
Absolutely. I mean, when people hear a signal failure, they just think of a bulb going. But there's many, for us, when you say signal failure, there could be a number of many things. Yes, it could be the signals. it could be the track, it could be a line, it could be on modern stock, it could be the communication between the train and the track. So there's so many different things it can be, not just a simple signal failure and a bulb. So there's all these different various things you've got to be aware of. And a driver is there basically to maintain the timetable, to keep the train moving, keep getting passengers where to go to the A and B. But also, a driver, unlike other professions, has to understand the train, because if you're in the tunnel or along the track and the train stops or is not running properly, you and only you have to resolve that problem. If it's major, you have to stop the train, secure it, and then work out what the problem is. And it is a fault finding. It's like a detective show. What's your symptoms? That's what you're looking for. Like a doctor, what is your symptoms? Right, so you've got clues. Have I got main and train line air? Is the train sluggish? Have I got power? You start with, we have this sort of cliche. I won't go into too much details, obviously, but there's this thing called ATL, air traction current overload. So have I got air? If you've got no air, then you suspect, have I got power or compressors? Then you've got traction current, have I got motors? Then if not, if you have got those, or you press and set the overloads, like a reset button of your phone. If that doesn't work, then you go for the clues. Have I got main car lighting inside? So is it your auxiliary batteries or your main batteries? And all these clues over and over again. But you've got a very short window to do it. You've got 4 minutes to work it out because trains are coming behind you. And if it's a tunnel, people are getting hot and bothered, and you have to get that train moving. Even in a reduced capacity, have to keep it moving in a safe manner. Safety, first every time, but then keep it moving. It's a priority. So a driver's got many hats. He's got many things you've got to do at the same time.
And of course, with this vintage of train, it isn't a question of flipping circuit breakers and so on. No. It's fuses. It's actually physically pulling fuses and checking them and putting new ones in.
Absolutely.
I still remember one of the things that you said to me, it must have been 23 years ago, when you were talking about the new stock had just come in on the Northern Line. It's the stock that we have today on the Northern Line. You got the 95 and the 96 coming in on the Jubilee. And at the time, we still had, I think it was 62s running.
That's right, 62s.
And because the 95s regenerate when they break, they would create voltage spikes. And I'm sure it was you who was telling me about that if you got a 95 come up behind a 62, or were still several 95s that were regenning, they could put a voltage spike that would pop the fuses on the 62.
100%, yes. The most common place was that on the Edgware branch, because you had a long section, so you'd have probably on the long sections, you have the 95s sort of going, the new stock going along. And then all of a sudden you lose power, and you think, what's going on? And your fuses are blown. And sometimes you even hear the fuse blow, you know it was. Strike the controller and then sort out from there.
Well, we're on our way back towards Acton now. Quite a trip down memory lane.
Very much so. Very much so.
And what do you think? Worth it for a visitor experience?
Listen, any opportunity you have to do this, whether you've experienced the first time or not, do it. Because if you experience it the first time, then it's reminiscent of bringing back memories from before. And if you haven't done it before, there's a good comparison between what trains were like then and what they're like now. So it's a win-win. If you get the opportunity, do it. Absolutely.
And you used to do it as a day job, so to choose to come and do it, it must be good.
As a day job, the engineers on this train now, it's a dream job, seriously. Sometimes they're good, sometimes the jobs are great. But like I said, whether you're an engineer or supporting or a visitor or a lover of the museum, London Trust Museum like us, if you get a job, absolutely do it. Absolutely great.
Well, there you go. That's all we've got for you on the train. Hope to see you out enjoying it soon.
What a beautiful film that was. And isn't it interesting that even when you're sat in like 2023, as it was, filming that, it felt like you were in the 60s, because those trains are so cosy. They're like little moving sitting rooms, aren't they? Oh. And when you talk about, falling asleep on the train and ending up at Morden, it must have been so easy to do that, Nixie.
I mean, you've only got to go and sit in the one that we've got in the gallery at Covent Garden, or to book and take a ride on that one from the depot to just, you sink into those seats. I mean,
it's no secret that I am partial to a transport nap.
Do you dribble when you do it?
No.
I dribble.
Some people do transport apps. She does transport
Naps.
naps.
Well, pretty much any time I'm in a moving vehicle of any kind, I'm
It's
just
the
like
rhythm,
just straight out. I don't. I've been on a 38 once and was sitting down, and it was lots going on, and even still, then I was like, oh no.
You nod off.
fall
You could
asleep.
nod
You
off.
came on that patron test run
Yeah, I
years
did,
ago,
yeah.
didn't you? And it was like,
It's beautiful. And when you look at the inside of it, I mean,
Yeah.
even when you think about maybe the design of the Elizabeth line, you've got that warm white light that attracts you to places where you're to dwell, and cool white light in the areas where you shouldn't really hang around. If you think about the entire interior of that train, it was warm. The white light. In fact, it wasn't really white. It was like a kind of a honey-coloured light, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The wooden floors, those beautiful plush seats.
Yeah.
I mean, the design detail on that law was so inviting, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you know me, I love the kind of difference in colour and textures and materials. I mean, you've got that beautiful moquette. You've got the wooden panel on the floors, on the window frames. Love it on the window frames. Andrew actually mentions it in the clip to you. Does he call it a warm glow of the shovel lights, which are just beautiful? Yeah. And I sneakily said to Chris kind of a little bit, is that because they shaped like a shovel? And it was a yes.
Yeah.
And the posters and the old maps. Sidi, I know you love that moquette as well, and the armrests. But all of that together, it makes me feel like melting. It's like honey. It's that warm kind of honey feeling of being in a space, and that's what I get with that carriage.
Do you know I'm glad you mentioned the maquette. That one's known as 38 stock check. Right, so it was one of the classic red and green maquettes, but it was done for when they were being refurbished. There's a whole slew of really, really beautiful maquettes in that red and green. I almost did that in the studio just because the red and green ones are really, really
love
nice.
the red and green.
But if you like it, good news, you can buy a range of things from the shop done in that maquette: furniture, accessories, bags, all sorts
It's
of
beautiful.
if you like the shovel lamps, I think the London Transport Museum Friends still have some replica ones.
Oh, because you had a giant order made.
They made a big batch of them to replace the missing ones on the Q stock restoration
That's
that they've been working
interesting.
on. So if you want to, say, fit out a shed or a lounge and you're a bit handy...
Man caves.
Shed or a lounge?
Yes. Yeah,
One or the other.
I mean, it's almost like that's what I'm doing, isn't it? As the way I think of that.
Brilliant.
Then that with a bit of maple flooring, because that's the wood they use. And you
nice.
get the 38 stock aesthetic.
But it's the mix of it all together.
It
It
is.
all just works like a brilliant jigsaw
It
puzzle.
makes me think of like Christmas at my grandmother's house.
Oh, I
It
love
is.
that.
And it's warmer down below, so it would have been nice and warm down the tube. It would have been perfect environment to sleep. But at that time, I was just putting myself in the picture of like the mid-'80s when these trains actually were brought back into service, tarted up and made look lovely and back in service. And if you were standing on the Northern Line platforms at the time, you could have been greeted either by a 1956, 59 or 62 stock train, which always have a sad face. Go with me on this. You could have had a 1972 stock train, which has got a very kind of like official face, or you could have had the warm smile of a 38 stock coming towards
It's
you.
like a luck of the draw.
Do you know, if you'd have been around when they were first produced, you would have seen the prototype ones had a completely different look again. So the prototypes, they had a much more sort of square finish to one of them. So I think the lights were sort of more blocky. And then there was one that was produced in full streamline that just, well, it looks like this. And it's a really wild looking thing with all these kind of flared sides to it. Incredible things. But of course, although they're known as the 38 stock and they're starting to be built before the Second World War breaks out, as soon as war does break out, well, of course, you know, building a fleet of tube trains with all of those expensive materials is not the best use of things. So, you know, enormous amount of steel in the bodies and even exotic alloys in the tread plates and so on. So, production was stopped and then restarted.
Yeah. So this trip that you went on, you were on a test run, right?
That's right. So this was a test run because every year we run our 38 stock
Yeah.
and sell tickets. So, people who would like to enjoy the experience that you've just seen there in person, try out those comfy seats.
Great events.
Go onto the museum website, look at our events schedule, and you can book heritage trips on it.
What a great day out. It actually is a huge amount of fun.
We love it.
Brilliant.
We love it.
And this was the effectively a shakedown test to check that the train was operating properly several weeks ahead of the run that we did in July last year around the Heathrow loop.
I was just about to say, where did you go to?
Yeah.
What was your route?
It's great.
So, sorry to be kind of pernickety, but I've been on one once before when we were on the District line, and I think we went as far as we went past Whitechapel, I think.
Yes, we did. That was
2019,
with the now
2020?
Commissioner.
Yes.
It was Andy Lord when
Well,
he
they
was
used
in
to be
his
on the
previous
East
role.
London line, didn't they? The 38s.
Yeah.
They used to run on the East London line.
And you've also been on the Uxbridge branch because you were on the very first test when it came back from its heavy overhaul, and we took the patrons up on that test run.
But this is on the Piccadilly line.
I know what you're going to ask. I think I'm about to ask the same question.
Is the reason we can bring that on there is because there isn't any upgrade in signalling, so you can mesh it with it.
You read my mind.
So basically, since we've been operating the 38 stock, we've been having to just keep ahead of where new signalling upgrades are changing the signalling to be on-train signalling. And at the moment, we've got the Piccadilly line, and there's a few other bits as well of the Underground which haven't had those signalling upgrades where we can run it. So the Metropolitan line out on the west side as well, keeping it west side. Is
Oh God,
It's going so well.
those are the places that we can run it. However, there is a plan that the 38 stock will have an upgrade done to it to give it on-train signalling.
Really?
So that'll be the
That's our hope.
2038 stock.
Yeah.
We need to get ourselves on that run. So
Yes, we
maybe
do.
And
being on one.
it's tad controversial because remember I said at the start the magic thing about the 38 stock is all the equipment fitted
It's
underneath and under the seats.
And you can't do that.
But it's full underneath it. So
course.
the only place to put equipment is actually in
the
the
first
saloon.
car,
So we'd have to make some modifications. And it has to have its own piece of software written just for it
To just communicate
to
with
effectively create the envelope, the signalling envelope in which it runs with
quite
its
major
unique
pieces of work.
braking and accelerating characteristics. And huge piece of work. If you're doing it for, say, a whole fleet of trains like the S stock, well, all of that cost is shared between the total number of trains. If you're doing it for one train,
It's blooming expensive.
that
big
software
investment.
engineer and the people who are doing the maths behind
That's
it have to do it just for
huge.
that. So
But you
that's
have-
why we're only doing one train with that.
Yeah.
But you have to do it because the new trains for the Piccadilly line are going to come online soon, and they have the capacity to be completely automatic. They won't be when they enter service. They'll still have a driver and they'll still do the Deadman's handle.
The modern stock gets more and more futuristic, and we're still able to run this legacy stock
amazing.
alongside it. It just makes it more and more unusual. And as you're going through the stations and not stopping in that one, just watching probably about half the people in the station just go, what the heck is that going through that? The other half are just in their phones and reading papers and just
It's wonderful,
supremely
though.
indifferent. But for those who notice, it's that magical moment of what?
And you imagine if you're standing on a platform of a Leslie Green station with those beautiful old tiles and a 1938 stock train comes through, you may as well step back in time in your own mind. It is absolutely stunning.
It's like a little bit of sparkle.
Absolutely.
The thing that particularly I enjoyed is taking that train all the way out to the far end of the Piccadilly line. It's there in its natural stomping ground. It's in stations that date from the 30s. And it completes the look. So, if you're out at Arnos Grove or somewhere like that, Southgate, exactly, that's the train that belongs there.
It's glorious. We should say this is a companion episode to one that we've already done about the 1938 stock. Do you remember when we started doing the Hangouts?
It's crazy to think how long ago it was.
We
now.
were allowed out. Do you remember when we were allowed out during one of the breaks and we went to the museum and had a run around and did the whole look of the place? of those old trains. It's beautiful.
I like to think of this as the practical exam for that written paper that we did then.
Absolutely, we did so well.
Always a little teacher analogy.
Yeah, and I've got loads of other questions, so let's pick those up on our Hang Up for the Patreons, okay? If you want to join Patreon, the usual details all on our website, isn't it?
Yep.
All on the LT Museum website. And if you want to get on these trains, keep an eye out for when the tickets are released, because it's a really, really cool thing to do. Before we finish this episode, I just want to say well done on the creation of this studio, because to think that even this part of the tube dates back to the 1940s and was done purposely to protect the lives of Londoners. And it's been through so many different guises, this bunker, this war shelter. Yeah. It's been a museum, it's been a document storage, it's been a hotel, it's been a landing point for so many people coming to the country. And now it's a studio. And I just think in terms of reversioning property or real estate under London, you've played a blinder. Yeah. It's an absolute blinder.
It's a versatile thing, this place, and has lent itself really well to it. I did, when I first set out to do this, it was a bit of an experiment to see whether we could get the sound characteristics right in here, because it's naturally a very shrill, echoey space. But
as a radio person, I love that. And the funny thing about it is, if you're looking at this thinking to yourself, why does this look more like a radio studio than it does like a TV studio? There's method in our madness, because when all this began, do you remember, like 2019 we started talking about this? It was going to be, I know, can you imagine? This was going to be a podcast.
Yeah.
And actually, it was only because of COVID that it became a very rapid Zoom thing. So, Nixie, am I to assume that there could be a sound version of something from the Hidden London Hangouts coming our way?
Well, the primary purpose of creating this space was to create a new podcast. So not Hangouts, but a new podcast for the museum. And actually probably a number of podcasts on different subjects. So when I started fitting this out, it was to create an audio studio. And again, a bit like the Hangouts, as I started doing more of it, thought, actually, do you know what? This could be a good Envision studio. So it's both. And you can expect that new podcast to come along this year. So we won't see you, but you'll hear us on that one fairly soon.
And you'll all be talking close to the microphone, won't you? Because that's what you like to do.
Here we go for ASMR.
Thank you so much for doing that journey today. What a cheery, sunny day it was, with a beautiful piece of London transport history. That was absolutely lovely. And thank you to our guest.
Honestly, it's so great to see Andrew again. He's retired now, so I don't get to see him that often. But I'd been looking for an excuse to go and do some camera work with Andrew for a while, because he's a good mate.
And do you know what as well? I don't know, I've missed the guard. There's something really lovely about knowing that there's a member of staff right there just to kind of comforting you, or just tell you that you've overslept or whatever.
Wake you up at your station.
Exactly. Get off my train. It's Morden. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Nix.
Very welcome. Pleasure as always. And we should also say thank you to some of the people from London Underground who make this happen. So we've got the technical fleet team there who make this happen. You've got the test crew drivers who are the only people allowed to and qualified to drive the 38 stock now. You've got all of the people on timetables and the chief technical crews who do all of the logistics and the stuff behind the scenes that allows this to happen. And Graham Neal in my team, who is the person at the museum who acts as the interface and used to work with the rolling stock, as head of rolling stock, to make it all actually function. So a lot of work.
Looks like a seamless episode, but much going on behind the scenes, as always.
The iceberg.
Thank you, Siddy.
Thank you. I've got to say, this is so nice. Doing this, seeing you guys in person, it feels really
kind of.
It's like, I don't know. It's brilliant. But yes, thank you.
All we need
as
now
well.
is a bottle of wine and
some nibbles.
sausage roll. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
Baby pacifier.
Mug of tea, Jill, in it.
Baby monitor over there in a couple of months' time. And Nora Hilton-Brown, thank you so much. I mean, this must have been completely bread and butter of you. And it was just literally the design, the look, the feel, everything that you love about the tube system. It was all on that train.
I mean, this is a really special episode because I love the connection with you and Andrew. I think that's a lovely way to start start it. And then I love the design and the whole kind of content of that episode. And then I love something you've just said, Alex, at the end of that we're repurposing another part of Clapham South, because this story is like really close to us all, because it's one of the first sites we opened for the Hidden London tours, and we're repurposing a section of that. And what Chris has cleverly done is he's done it on the tour route, but in a section that doesn't interrupt the tour route.
Yeah.
So he's been very, very clever, and there's a lot of love that has gone into this, and I think we're going to have some really, really special times.
It's going to be gorgeous. And just make sure when you're listening or watching this that you have your volume up fairly well, because occasionally you'll hear the sound of the trains coming on the Northern Line, which I love.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely
it
adore it.
adds so much.
The rumble.
Yeah. It
Which you
feels
do get
like
to
we
hear
are
on the
so
tours.
safe under London down here, doesn't it?
All
It's-
part of the Atmos.
I know, it's great. It's great. Thank you so much indeed for watching us. As always, find us on Instagram, Alex Grundon, Chris Nix, City Holloway, Hidden London Law, and at LT Museum. You found us on YouTube. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, and comment down below with the places you'd like us to go next. And we'll be back very soon indeed. In the meantime, from way below London, have yourself a great day and stay safe.